Chalkhill Estate.
Yeah, so we're in Chalkhill Estate, northwest London. We're in Wembley, and I'm going to show you a lot around.
Yes,
So,
sir.
If you're from ends, I'm pretty sure you've been seeing that things have been changing around you. These changes are called gentrification, and more time the Mandem are the most at risk to these changes. Reason being, we live on fertile ground, and that essentially makes us a target. So, how do we preserve the Mandem? We privatise. So how do we privatise? We buy the block. If you want to know how to do this, visit privatizethemandem.com. There's an 80-page blueprint and manifesto detailing how we can privatise the ends. We're also building a privatisation line. The number's 07554 658 435. Give me a shout. I can answer any of your questions, and I can come to your block and we can discuss how you can privatise your ends.
Yeah.
These blocks we call the scientist estate. So this building is called Boyle House, as in Dr. Boyle, Arthur Boyle. I think that's his name. Nobel Prize winner. This building is dedicated to him. You've got Curie House over there, which is named after Madame Curie, who was a biologist, and she helped discover sort of new knowledge around cancer and cancer cells.
Okay.
You got Harvey House right behind it. Again, another scientist. I think he was a physician. And we've got Einstein House over there. It brought about the question of like, who names these buildings and how do they have the ability to name them? And if we were to have a building, how would we name it? So these garages now, they've been cited for construction. So the landlord is going to build more flats, affordable housing. But
So how long have these been around here for?
these have been around since the 1970s,
Okay.
when the Chalkhill estate was first constructed. They were one of the estates across London and the country that were built following World War II, so post-war housing. And yeah, they still stand today. Was part of a regeneration effort to supposedly decrease the crime rate of the Chalkhill estate by knocking down buildings and building lower-rise ones. And there's a whole story as to why that was. The Chalkhill estate was modelled after Park Hill in Sheffield, so there would have been high-rise bison blocks here, interconnected walkways called walkways in the sky, and the estate stretches approximately 1-2 miles across northwest London. At the time, there was a lot of racial aggravation towards the mainly migrant community here, and so the National Front and the police were quite active in their sort of negative behaviours towards the residents. So a lot of residents would run into their blocks whilst being chased by racist police, and they would be able to run from one end of the estate in Wembley through the walkways in the sky all the way to the other side of the estate down in Neasden, Blackbird Hill, without touching the ground. Obviously, police didn't have any jurisdiction back then, and that caused a bit of concern for government. And so what they did was the Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher, tried to designate the walkways of residential blocks as public highways, so that police can chase these people. That didn't get through government, and so the alternative was to sort of create a narrative around this particular estate as being a sink estate, needing to be regenerated to remove the criminal elements. So they knocked it down and built mid-rise housing. Those flats there are minimalist architecture. They're meant to be modern. Chalk Hill is one of the only places in London that you can look across the street. You've got social housing on the right, and if you look on the left, you've got traditional sort of Anglo-Saxon, middle-class, Victorian housing. The estate used to be like this all throughout. In the early sort of 1950s, and then post-war housing happened. Local government bought the land and demolished this sort of housing and built social housing across Wembley. We're the ones who are left behind, do you get? But these times, London and the country uses us, it uses our culture, it uses people like us to make money, and we don't really see any of it. So we're like, cool, whatever money we do get, we will use and invest in ourselves. If investment don't come from them, let it come from us. And that's the premise, that's really what sparked it for man, really. The council is the landlord.
Yeah,
The
but
council-
they have to do it.
If we were landlords,
Yeah.
we could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a tiny piece of nature, sort of untouched, but it's gorgeous. In a 15-minute walk, you're within range of like natural beauty, a BMX track, like 2 public parks, surrounded by beautiful neighbours, schools. Like this is fertile ground. You just need people to realise it, wake up a little bit, and see the opportunity that comes with like self-determination of land ownership and like almost having the ability to imagine what a place would look like under their ownership. So my name is Nabil Al-Kinani. I'm 28 years old. Originally I'm from Iraq, but I came to the UK when I was 2. I've been in Chalk Hill Estate a majority of my life in Northwest London in Wembley, and I work as a built environment professional, urbanist, and horticultural producer.
In your book,
Yep.
you mention at every election, the Mandem are the first to feel the effects of policy due to our dependency on the state. We are constantly at the mercy of the ballot. This puts us at a permanent disadvantage because it's difficult to nurture a functional community when operating under this form of political turbulence. I found that interesting. So your work is political, yet yourself, you are not a politician. Is that possible? And is that the future of politics?
I mean, if you look at the root word of politics, it comes from the Greek politia, which means the people, everyone. And so if we start questioning the role of people in politics and separate politics from the people it affects, we start to tread a very dangerous territory. Politics affects people. When it comes to our communities, specifically the Mandem, we're the ones who are first and foremost directly affected by policies that the state brings forward. A lot of the reasons why is due to the fact that we're quite dependent as diaspora on the state, and so whenever the state ebbs and flows, we ebb and flow with it. So in order for us to shield ourselves from politics and political sentiments, there are particular laws in this country that we can activate and use that privatizes us and allows us to be shielded from the ebbs and flows of the 4-year election cycle. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the political class, and I think it's the day-to-day average
everyday person who really needs to sort of be a bit more in touch and more influential in the politics that happens around us.
So we often hear that aha moment where people then become extremely political or find their political place in their society. What was your aha moment?
Mine wasn't an immediate aha moment. It was a gradual exposure to sort of spatial politics throughout my teenage years. So we're in Chalk Hill right now. But walking through it, right behind us, you can see all of the cranes and all of the towers behind us. Throughout my teenage years, I saw the construction of these tower blocks, and upon completion, I would learn very, very quickly that these buildings are not for us. Upon learning that these buildings weren't necessarily built for us or designed for us, it made me question who's making decisions on the ground that affects my people. Bit of a loudmouth, reading sort of legislation and reading party manifestos and sort of seeing what's happening on the ground. It made me realize the most powerful person in Britain is the landowner, because I could see the decisions that landowners were making, and so I ultimately wanted that power to be inherited by my people. So I had to work out a way to ensure that my people have a foolproof method of gaining land ownership.
Can you share examples of successful collaborations that have furthered the impact of your work?
Yeah, we got the brothers over in Tower Hamlets in East London, Hackney side. Coffee Afrique.
Shout out to Coffee Afrique, man.
They're amazing. They're phenomenal. They're doing the real work on the
Yeah.
ground. And we sat down with the brothers and we were reasoning for a while, talking about Privatise the Mandem and the power of politics and land and how we can utilize that. And mashallah, they've taken it and they've run with it, and it's beautiful to see all of the work they've done with the Hood Futurism Fund and the constant daily sort of checking in with the family. And yeah, I'm a very, very big fan of them. Other collaborations we've worked with a lot of groups in Birmingham. So someone called Amara Spence and her team run a place called Yard Art House.
I've heard of it.
Amazing work. They're very much looking to create new futures which benefit our people. And obviously, with the ability to create new futures, you need an infrastructure, a place to house them. So that's where some of the collaboration comes in. We've worked with the likes of Imi and her team in Civic Square in Birmingham. Again, phenomenal work looking at how we can create a future that's less extractive, a future that is more sustainable. And we got the brothers up in Sheffield and yourself. And it's the beauty of the Privatise the Mandem work is it's not really much. It's just a concept. It's a skeleton infrastructure that people can create within.
So you're quite young in the grand scheme of things when it comes to politics in itself. But there's this narrative where young people are apathetic towards politics. Do you think this is true?
I do. I think you need to remember that young people don't operate in a vacuum. They are nephews and sons, nieces and daughters, and all of them, a lot of them come from families who were part of the anti-racist movement, who may have been part of the British Black Panthers, whose parents were carrying placards in the sort of 1900s, late 1900s, and we can see today that a lot of change hasn't happened, and so a lot of people will feel disenfranchised. A lot of young people will think to themselves, politics hasn't served my parents, why would it serve me? Politics doesn't serve me today, why should I go through the effort of trying to engage with it? And that's a really, really big barrier.
especially when we're trying to have more young people engage with politics, because ultimately they are the future. It does feel like there is a political class, and there are sort of systems of nepotism where the children of politicians grow up to become politicians themselves, and it becomes an exclusive club. The way we govern in Britain also um, doesn't really allow for much transparency of political institutions. So you can't just walk into Westminster. Um, and it's really difficult to get a hold of your local MP. Um, so there must be ways, I believe, there must be ways that if the political system wants to prevail, it has to open up its doors a lot more. And it has to prove to young people that they are listening, because it feels like they're not.
So, in your line of work, can you share some difficulties that you faced while challenging economic policy, and how did you overcome it?
So, there are two fronts that I'm fighting on. The first one is very much looking internally into my community. I can say with confidence that my people are maliciously ill-informed. So a lot of information just isn't made available to us. And the policies and legislation that affect us most are very difficult to identify, let alone challenge. So it takes a lot of reading, and it takes a lot of translation to the tongue that you and I can understand when speaking to my people, and having them understand the magnitude that a particular policy that's introduced can have. So that's an ongoing piece of work, that's an ongoing front that's quite challenging, but it's working. People are listening. The second front is those outside of my community, particularly speaking to people who may not necessarily see the value of my people. They may not necessarily see that my people are productive, that my people are worth investment, and it's challenging sort of the systems of values that exist today, which doesn't necessarily place value on the diaspora communities or the Mandem in general. So it's a double-fronted sort of battle that we're going through at the moment, challenging sort of perceptions and systems of value outside of us, and sort of educating and translating information for us.
So, Nabil, and I keep going back to this, you're involved in politics, but you're not a politician. What advice do you have for the people out there who want to become politically engaged without taking up political office?
One thing I'll say is, firstly, everyone has to be engaged with politics because it affects their families, it affects their homes, and disengagement doesn't help. The one thing I would say is, there's a very famous quote from Thomas Sankara, who was the first president of Burkina Faso. And in essence, I'm paraphrasing, but he says it takes a certain amount of madness to want change. And so all of us are engaged in some form of politics on our day-to-day lives. And we all want change that benefits us and our neighbors. Now, there are those who benefit from the status quo. And those who benefit from the status quo do not want change. And they will put their full might behind anything that stands against the change you're pursuing. They will make you feel like you're crazy. But it does take a certain amount of madness to still want to pursue that change. So, resilience is the key word. If you can employ resilience and understand the power that you have in your existence, in your story, and the amount of weight that carries,
you'll go a very, very long way. And it goes across all political spectrums. So housing, economy, migration, defense, everything, domestic issues to international issues. Your story enriches the discussion. People will make you feel silly or make you feel like an outlier for being different, but your difference is your strength. So celebrate your difference and don't be ashamed. Like, run it, run your stories, run your experience. They are more powerful than you think they are.